Do you know how to divide a mixed cost into fixed and variable cost? In this video you will learn what is mixed cost and how to divide mixed cost into fixed and variable costs. It's not always that easy to identify and separate fixed and variable costs. As I mentioned in the video about variable costs, the term semi-variable costs is used in such situations. Semi-variable costs are sometimes called mixed costs because they contain both a fixed and a variable component. Rental of a truck is a good example of a mixed cost. The terms of such rental usually include a fixed fee, such as a daily fee, and a variable fee based on kilometers or miles driven. For this reason, when determining the cost of a one-day rental, the amount will consist of a fixed and variable part. It means that the rental cost will be different each day due to a different value of the variable component, which is the number of kilometers or miles driven. Now imagine a summary of a year where each day has a different cost for renting a truck. Would you be able to say what is the value of fixed and variable cost by looking at over 300 different rental costs? I don't think so. For purposes of CVP analysis, mixed costs must be classified into their fixed and variable elements. Since we cannot distinguish between fixed and variable costs in this example, how can we apply CVP analysis? The answer is that we need to find a method that enables this classification. One possibility is to determine the variable and fixed components each time a mixed cost is incurred. Referring to the example where we rent a truck, you would have to calculate the value of the fixed and variable costs for each day of the year. This approach requires a lot of analysis. So, because of time and cost constraints, this approach is rarely used. Instead, we typically collect data on the behavior of mixed costs at various levels of business activity. Based on this, we can identify fixed and variable components. There are several ways to do this. One type of analysis is called the high-low method. The high-low method uses the total costs incurred at the high and the low levels of activity to classify mixed costs into fixed and variable components. In other words, we look at the volume of business activity and compare cost changes when activity is higher and lower. The difference between these two cost levels represents variable costs, since only the variable cost element can change as activity levels change. Let me give you an example. Imagine our company has the following maintenance costs and mileage data for its fleet of trucks over a 6-month period. The graph shows this data. Now let's connect the lowest and highest points on the graph with a red line. As you can see, the rest of the points are not on the red line. This is what happens with mixed costs. Our red line will represent the equation we will use for the high-low method. In other words, the red line will be the basis to estimate fixed and variable costs. It will be a significant simplification, which means that this method is not very precise. High activity is 50,000 miles in April, and low is 19,000 miles in January. Maintenance costs for high and low activity are $62.5 thousand and $25.3 thousand, respectively. To figure out the variable cost per unit, we need to divide the change in total cost by the change in activity. This relationship is represented by the following formula. Let's put the data into the formula. In our case, instead of the number of products, we put the number of miles driven. The difference in maintenance costs is $37,200 and the difference in miles is 31,000. Therefore, the variable cost per unit is $1.2. Since we know what our variable cost is, we can now calculate the fixed cost. Let's do it together. The total cost is the sum of the fixed and variable costs. Hence, we know that the fixed cost is the total cost minus the variable cost, and the total variable cost is the variable unit cost multiplied by the number of units. Now we have to choose which value to put into the formula as the total cost. We can put the largest or the smallest value. Whatever we do, the end value will be exactly the same. Let's start with the highest value first. The total fixed cost with the highest activity is $2.5 thousand. Now let's calculate the fixed cost for the lowest activity. You see, no matter which one we choose, the highest or the lowest, the result is the same. Now we can compose a formula for monthly costs in our company. It will look like this. Maintenance costs are therefore $2.5 thousand per month of fixed costs plus $1.2 per mile of a variable cost. This formula is also valuable in forecasting likely future administrative costs. For example, what maintenance cost should the company expect in a month when it schedules 25,000 miles. For 25,000 miles, estimated maintenance cost will be $2,500 fixed and $30,000 variable, for a total of $32,500. Now that you know how to divide mixed costs into fixed and variable costs, you can use the CVP analysis. A mixed cost with lower fixed part is favorable for a business because the break-even point is lower. Let's summarize the advantages and disadvantages of the high-low method. This method assumes a straight line relationship between costs and output levels lying between the two observations. For this reason, it is easy to use and it allows the manager to get a quick fix on a cost relationship using only 2 data points. The obtained result may be incorrect because we consider extremes, the highest and the lowest value, and these levels and their associated cost behaviors may be unusual and therefore unrepresentative. If so, the cost formula computed using these 2 points will not represent what usually takes place. Moreover, even if these points are not outliers, other pairs of points may be more representative. The high-low method is usually not as accurate as other methods.